At exactly 3:47 a.m. on September 27, 2021, Marina Johnson's phone camera captured something that would make your blood run cold. She was sitting in her car outside an apartment complex in Brighton, Oregon, conducting surveillance on a man she suspected had murdered her 19-year-old cousin. What she recorded that night would become the key piece of evidence in one of the most shocking college murder cases in recent memory. But Marina didn't know she was filming a killer disposing of evidence. All she saw through her camera lens was a man in maintenance coveralls carrying what looked like a bundle of laundry toward his apartment building. It wasn't until she zoomed in and whispered those bone-chilling words, "Oh my God, that's Avery's blanket," that she realized she was watching her beloved cousin's murderer in real time. The blanket was distinctive, a handmade quilt that Avery's grandmother had sewn with love for her granddaughter's college journey. Marina had helped deliver it to Avery's dorm room just weeks earlier. There was absolutely no mistaking it. And now she was watching the man who had killed Avery carry away the evidence of his crime, believing he had gotten away with murder.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
But this story doesn't start with that horrifying 3 a.m. discovery. It starts 72 hours earlier with a text message that would prove to be tragically prophetic. A message that, when you hear it, will send chills down your spine and make you question how many other warning signs we ignore every single day. On Tuesday, September 21st, 2021, at 11:43 p.m., 19-year-old Avery Johnson sent a text message to her cousin Marina that would haunt everyone who read it. After sharing yet another screenshot of inappropriate messages from Marcus Williams, the 27-year-old janitor who worked in her dormitory, Avery typed words that would prove to be a chilling prediction of her own fate. "Girl, I'm not even playing. Honestly, if I go missing, start with him. This man is getting scary." Marina screenshot that message immediately, thinking her cousin was just being dramatic about an annoying coworker. She had no idea that in less than 72 hours, those words would become the roadmap to solving Avery's murder. But here's what will shock you. This wasn't the first time Avery had expressed fear about Marcus Williams. For weeks, she had been documenting a pattern of escalating harassment that should have terrified anyone who saw it. The question that will haunt you as you hear this story is simple. How many red flags have to be raised before someone takes action? Avery Johnson was everything a parent dreams their child will become. At 19, this brilliant chemistry major at Clearview University in Brighton, Oregon, was not just excelling academically, she was thriving in every aspect of her life. She maintained a 3.8 GPA while working part-time at the prestigious Birchwood Heights dorms to help pay for her education. Her professors knew her name, her classmates sought her help with organic chemistry, and her family spoke to her multiple times every day. Avery was the kind of young woman who carried her childhood plushie, Benny, everywhere because it reminded her of home and the family who had sacrificed everything to get her to this prestigious university. She was cautious about her safety, installing extra security locks on her dorm room windows. She was methodical about documentation, keeping detailed records of her studies and, unfortunately, of the inappropriate behavior she was experiencing from a campus employee. Growing up as a black woman, Avery had learned early to trust her instincts when something felt wrong. Her parents had taught her to be aware of her surroundings, to document concerning interactions, and to never ignore that feeling in her stomach when someone made her uncomfortable. These survival instincts that her family had carefully cultivated would prove to be absolutely crucial in the investigation that followed her disappearance. But what makes Avery's story so heartbreaking is that she did everything right. She recognized danger. She documented the threats. She told people what was happening. She asked for help. And the system still failed her in the most catastrophic way possible. Marcus Williams was 27 years old when he began working as a janitor at Birchwood Heights dorms, 8 years older than the students he was supposed to serve and protect. But Marcus wasn't just any maintenance worker. He had a history with Clearview University that the administration had tried to bury, a past that would prove to be absolutely crucial to understanding how this tragedy unfolded. Marcus had once been a student at Clearview himself, pursuing a degree in engineering. He had been dismissed in his junior year for what the university euphemistically called misconduct, details that administrators had kept deliberately vague when they made the decision to offer him a second chance through their housing work-study program. What exactly was that misconduct? The university files that would later be unsealed during the investigation paint a disturbing picture. Multiple female students had filed complaints about Marcus's behavior during his time as a student. He had been accused of following women across campus, of showing up uninvited at their dorm rooms, of sending inappropriate messages through the university email system. But instead of being permanently banned from campus, Marcus had been quietly dismissed with the understanding that he could reapply for employment through the work-study program after a cooling-off period. It was a decision that university administrators would later deeply regret, but by then it would be too late. As a janitor at Birchwood Heights dorms, Marcus had something far more dangerous than he'd ever had as a student. Unrestricted access to every room, every hallway, every private space where students lived. He had master keys, keycard access, and most dangerously,
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
he had the invisibility that comes with a uniform and a university badge. Students saw him as part of the infrastructure, barely noticing when he was around. But Marcus was noticing them, particularly the young women who lived alone. And he had become dangerously fixated on one student in particular, Avery Johnson. The harassment began subtly, the way it always does. Marcus started with seemingly innocent compliments about Avery's dedication to her studies. "You work so hard," he would say when he saw her studying in the common areas. "I really admire that about you." Then came the offers to help with things she hadn't asked for help with. "Let me carry those books for you. I can walk you to your car if you're leaving late. I know this campus better than anyone. I can show you shortcuts." When Avery politely declined these offers, Marcus began asking personal questions. Where was she from? What was her family like? Was she dating anyone? These questions made Avery uncomfortable, but she tried to handle them with grace, giving short, polite answers and then removing herself from the conversations. But Marcus interpreted her politeness as interest, and when she began avoiding him, he interpreted that as playing hard to get. The text messages started in early September. Marcus had somehow obtained Avery's phone number, a violation of university policy that should have resulted in his immediate termination. His first messages were casual. "Hey, it's Marcus from the dorm. Hope you're having a good day." When Avery didn't respond, the messages became more frequent and more personal. "I know you're busy with your studies, but I'd love to take you out sometime. You deserve to be treated like the queen you are." Avery screenshot every message and shared them with her family. Her Aunt Lila was immediately concerned. "This man shouldn't have your phone number," she told Avery during one of their daily calls. "You need to report this to campus security." But Avery was hesitant to make waves. She was on scholarship, working to pay her way through school, and she didn't want to be seen as a troublemaker. It's a calculation that countless young women make every day. Is the harassment bad enough to risk the consequences of reporting it? The decision to stay quiet would prove to be a fatal mistake. By mid-September, Marcus's behavior had escalated dramatically. The text messages became longer, more emotional, and increasingly inappropriate. He began sending Avery messages late at night, describing his feelings for her in graphic detail. "You know I respect you, right?" he texted her at 2 a.m. on September 15th. "I just think you deserve someone who sees how special you are. These college boys don't know how to treat a woman like you." When Avery continued to ignore his messages, Marcus became frustrated and accusatory. "I see you reading my messages but not responding. That's disrespectful. I'm trying to show you I care about you, and you're treating me like I'm invisible." The messages that followed were a masterclass in manipulation and emotional abuse. "I'm not like these other guys who just want to use you. I want to take care of you. I want to provide for you. I want to show you what it's like to be with a real man who appreciates what he has." Avery shared every screenshot with her cousin Marina, who was becoming increasingly alarmed by the escalating nature of the harassment. "This isn't normal workplace behavior," Marina told her. "This man is obsessed with you." But the text messages were just the beginning. Marcus had also begun finding excuses to be near Avery's floor of the dormitory more frequently. He would show up outside her room claiming to be checking on maintenance issues that didn't exist. He would linger in the hallways when she was coming or going, trying to strike up conversations. Other students began to notice his behavior too. Avery's neighbor, Sarah Chun, would later tell investigators that she had seen Marcus standing outside Avery's room on multiple occasions, just listening at the door. "It was creepy," Sarah said. "He wasn't doing any work. He was just standing there, trying to hear what was going on inside her room."
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
The most disturbing incident happened on September 18th, just 6 days before Avery disappeared. She returned to her dorm room to find that her air conditioning had mysteriously broken. When she called the maintenance hotline, Marcus arrived at her door within 5 minutes, suspiciously fast for someone who was supposedly responding to multiple campus calls. "I'll take good care of you," he said as he entered her room to examine the AC unit. "I always take special care of my favorite residents." The comment made Avery's skin crawl, but what happened next was even worse. Marcus spent over an hour in her room, supposedly fixing the air conditioning, but Avery noticed that he seemed more interested in looking through her belongings than working on the AC unit. "He kept asking about my family photos," Avery told Marina that night. "He wanted to know who everyone was, where they lived, how often they visited. It felt like he was gathering information about me." When Marcus finally left, Avery's air conditioning was working, but she felt violated. Someone who was supposed to be helping her had used the opportunity to invade her privacy and gather personal information about her life. That night, Avery sent the text message that would prove to be prophetic. "Girl, I'm not even playing. Honestly, if I go missing, start with him. This man is getting scary." Friday, September 24th, 2021, started like any other day for Avery Johnson. But there were subtle signs that something was different. Her roommate, Jessica Martinez, would later tell investigators that Avery seemed more anxious than usual that morning. "She kept checking her phone and looking over her shoulder," Jessica said. "When I asked if she was okay, she said she had a weird feeling but couldn't explain it." Avery had organic chemistry lab that morning, followed by her shift at the dorm's front desk. Her supervisor noted that she performed her duties normally but seemed distracted. She kept glancing toward the maintenance areas, as if she was watching for someone. At 2:30 p.m., Avery finished her shift and headed back to her room to pack for her surprise trip home. She was excited about seeing her family, texting her grandmother about her famous sweet potato pie and asking her little sister about her upcoming school play. But unknown to Avery, Marcus Williams was already setting his plan in motion. Security footage would later show Marcus entering Birchwood Heights dorms at 4:30 p.m., pushing a maintenance cart toward the elevator. He used his key card to access Avery's floor at 4:34 p.m., a full hour before Avery was scheduled to return from her classes. What was Marcus doing in that dormitory for over an hour before Avery came back? The investigation would later reveal that he was preparing for an ambush. At 5:07 p.m., Avery sent what would be her final text message. "Waiting for my Uber now. Should be home by 9. Can't wait to see everyone, 2 hearts." Security cameras captured her walking through the dormitory lobby, heading toward the elevator that would take her to her floor. She was smiling, excited about her trip home, completely unaware that someone was waiting for her in her own room. What happened in the next 45 minutes would change everything forever. And the evidence of those horrific 45 minutes would only be discovered because Avery's family refused to accept the official explanation of her disappearance. By 6 p.m., Avery should have been at the airport checking in for her flight home. By 7 p.m., she should have been texting her family with updates about her departure. By 8 p.m., she should have been in the air, on her way to the surprise reunion she had been looking forward to all week. Instead, Avery Johnson had vanished without a trace. Every call to her phone went straight to voicemail. Every text message came back as undelivered. For a family who spoke to Avery multiple times every day, this silence was not just alarming, it was terrifying. "That's not Avery," her Aunt Lila told her husband when Avery's phone went dark. "Something's wrong. Something's very, very wrong." When 9 p.m. came and went with no word from Avery, Lila began calling the airline. The customer service representative confirmed what the family already feared. Avery Johnson had never checked in for her flight. She had never even arrived at the airport. But here's where the story takes its first shocking twist. When Lila called campus security to report her niece missing, their response revealed an institutional failure that would prove to be catastrophic. "Ma'am, college students miss flights all the time," the dispatcher told her. "Maybe she decided to stay on campus and party with friends. We can send someone to do a welfare check tomorrow if she doesn't turn up." Tomorrow. For a family whose daughter had never missed a check-in, never failed to answer her phone, never deviated from her plans without letting someone know, being told to wait until tomorrow felt like a death sentence. "You don't understand," Lila said, her voice rising. "My niece doesn't just disappear. She doesn't miss flights. She doesn't ignore her phone. Something has happened to her." But the campus security dispatcher was unmoved. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have protocols. We can't treat every missed flight as an emergency. Students are adults, and they have the right to change their plans without checking in with their families." It was a response that would cost precious time in finding Avery's killer, and it revealed an institutional mindset that prioritized avoiding work over protecting students.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
When campus security finally agreed to send an officer to check on Avery late Friday night, their approach was so inadequate it bordered on criminal negligence. The officer knocked on her door, got no answer, tried the handle, found it locked, and made a note in his report. "Room secure. Resident not present. No signs of distress." He never tried to contact Avery's roommate to see if she had any information about Avery's whereabouts. He never checked with other students on the floor to see if anyone had seen or heard anything unusual. He never examined the room's window or looked for any signs that something might be wrong. Most importantly, he never noticed that the door was locked from the inside, a detail that should have immediately raised red flags about Avery's safety. When Saturday morning came and Avery still hadn't surfaced, campus security agreed to do a more thorough check. But even this thorough investigation was marked by assumptions and incompetence that would prove costly. The second officer who responded noted that Avery's door was indeed locked from the inside, but her window was open. Rather than recognizing this as a potential sign of foul play, he concluded that Avery had probably left through the window to avoid being detected by residence hall staff. "Students do this all the time when they want to sneak out after hours," he wrote in his report. "No evidence of forced entry or struggle. Subject likely departed voluntarily." It was a conclusion that revealed a complete lack of understanding about who Avery Johnson was as a person. Anyone who knew her would have known that she never broke rules, never snuck out, never did anything that might jeopardize her scholarship or her standing at the university. But the officer didn't know Avery, and he didn't bother to ask anyone who did. Marina Johnson and her mother Lila weren't willing to wait for campus security to take their concerns seriously. By Saturday morning, they were in their car driving the 4 hours from their home to Clearview University. If the authorities wouldn't treat Avery's disappearance as an emergency, they would investigate themselves. What they didn't know was that every hour they spent driving to campus was another hour that evidence was being destroyed, that the crime scene was being contaminated, and that Avery's killer was covering his tracks. When Marina and Lila arrived at Birchwood Heights dorms on Saturday afternoon, they went straight to the campus security office. The officers they met with were polite but dismissive, explaining that college students go missing all the time and that there was probably a simple explanation for Avery's absence. "Has she been under any stress lately?" one officer asked. "Academic pressure can make students do unpredictable things." Marina wanted to scream. These people didn't understand that Avery thrived under academic pressure. that she was excited about her studies, that she had been looking forward to coming home all week. "We want to see her room," Lila demanded. The security officers explained that they had already checked the room twice and found nothing suspicious. But under pressure from the family, they agreed to let Marina and Lila take a look for themselves. What Marina and Lila found in that dorm room would shatter their world and expose the complete inadequacy of the official investigation. The first thing Marina noticed when she entered Avery's room was how wrong everything felt. This wasn't the neat, organized space of the meticulous chemistry student she knew and loved. The room was in disarray, with furniture pushed out of place and personal belongings scattered across the floor. But it was Benny, Avery's beloved childhood plushie, that confirmed their worst fears. "She didn't leave," Marina whispered, picking up the small stuffed animal. Avery would never leave Benny behind. Anyone who knew Avery would have recognized this immediately as a red flag. Benny went everywhere with Avery, to study sessions, to visit friends, and absolutely on any trip home to see her family. The fact that Benny was still sitting on her bed meant that Avery hadn't packed for a trip, hadn't left voluntarily, and was almost certainly in danger. But campus security had missed this crucial detail because they had never bothered to learn anything about the missing student they were supposed to be looking for. Lila was examining the rest of the room with the careful attention of a mother who knew her daughter's habits. Avery's laptop was missing from her desk. She always left it plugged in when she traveled, but it was nowhere to be found. Her chemistry textbooks were scattered across the floor, which was completely unlike the organized student who color-coded her notes and kept her study materials in perfect order. But what Marina found next would confirm that they were looking at a crime scene. Avery's favorite bracelet, a gift from her grandmother, was broken on the floor with beads scattered across the carpet. Avery would never take this bracelet off, Marina told the campus security officer, and she definitely wouldn't leave it broken on the floor. Someone broke this during a struggle. The officer shrugged. College students break jewelry all the time. Maybe she was getting ready in a hurry. But Marina was already finding more evidence that the official investigation had missed. Under Avery's colorful area rug, partially hidden beneath her bed frame, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. A box cutter, stained with what appeared to be blood. "Avery doesn't own anything like this," Marina said, her voice shaking. "She's a chemistry major, not an art student. Why would she have a box cutter hidden in her room?" And then Marina found the evidence that would haunt her forever. Blood on Avery's pillow. Not a lot, but enough to indicate that violence had occurred in this room. "We need to call the police," Lila said, her voice barely a whisper. "This is a crime scene." But when campus security finally contacted the local Brighton Police Department, the response was frustratingly familiar. "We'll send someone over to take a report, but from what you're describing, there's no clear evidence of a crime." College students can be messy, and they sometimes leave campus without telling anyone. While waiting for the police to arrive, Marina and Lila decided to continue their own investigation. They knew that Avery had been concerned about Marcus Williams, and they needed to find him to ask him about the last time he had seen their cousin. What they discovered next would change everything. As they walked through the dormitory complex looking for Marcus, they encountered other students who had disturbing stories to tell about the janitor's behavior. "He's been weird lately," said David Park, a junior who lived on Avery's floor. "I've seen him hanging around outside girls' rooms, just listening at the doors. When you catch him doing it, he always has some excuse about checking for maintenance issues." Sarah Chen, Avery's neighbor, had an even more disturbing account. "Last week, I heard someone trying to open my door really late at night. When I looked through the peephole, it was Marcus. He claimed he was responding to a maintenance call, but I never called maintenance. And he seemed disappointed when I answered the door, like he was hoping no one would be home." But the most shocking revelation came from Maria Santos, a sophomore who worked in the campus bookstore. "Marcus has been asking weird questions about students who live in Birchwood Heights. He wanted to know their schedules, their backgrounds, whether they had boyfriends. I thought it was just small talk, but looking back, it feels like he was gathering information." These accounts painted a picture of a predator who had been using his position and access to stalk female students, with Avery as his primary target. But Marina and Lila were about to discover evidence that would prove Marcus's guilt beyond any doubt. Marina and Lila decided to stake out the dormitory complex, hoping to catch Marcus when he returned from wherever he had been hiding since Avery's disappearance. They parked across from the staff housing area and settled in for what they thought might be a long wait. At 3:47 a.m. on Monday morning, their patience was rewarded in the most horrifying way possible. Marina was dozing in the passenger seat when Lila nudged her awake. "Someone's coming," she whispered. A figure in maintenance coveralls was walking through the parking lot, carrying what appeared to be a bundle of laundry. In the dim light, it was hard to make out details, but something about the person's movements seemed furtive, secretive. Marina had the presence of mind to start recording on her phone, zooming in as much as possible to capture whatever was happening. As the figure got closer to the staff housing building, they could see it was Marcus Williams. But what he was carrying made Marina's heart stop and her hands shake so violently she almost dropped her phone. It was Avery's quilt, the distinctive handmade blanket that her grandmother had sewn with love for her granddaughter's college journey. Marina had helped Avery arrange it on her bed just weeks earlier when they moved her into the dorm. There was absolutely no mistaking it. "Oh my God," Marina whispered, her voice barely audible on the recording. "That's Avery's blanket." They were watching Marcus Williams dispose of evidence from their cousin's murder, and they had it all on camera. But what happened next would provide even more crucial evidence. As Marcus approached his building, he dropped something from the bundle he was carrying. In the video, you can see him quickly pick it up, but not before Marina's camera captured what it was. Avery's missing laptop. "He killed her," Lila said, her voice filled with a mixture of grief and rage. "That monster killed our baby." Marina and Lila sat in their car, hearts pounding, as they watched Marcus disappear into his building with the evidence of his crime. They knew they had just captured proof of his involvement in Avery's murder, but they also knew they needed to be smart about how they used this evidence. "We need to confront him," Marina said. "We need to get him to admit what he's done." What followed would be one of the most chilling confrontations ever captured on camera. When Marcus emerged from his building 40 minutes later, Marina and Lila were waiting for him. In the early morning light, they could see his face clearly for the first time since Avery had disappeared, and what they saw confirmed their worst fears. Marcus looked exhausted and disheveled, with what appeared to be fresh scratch marks on his neck and hands. His clothes were dirty, and he kept looking over his shoulder as if he expected to be followed. "Excuse me," Marina called out, approaching him with her phone still recording. "Are you Marcus Williams?" Marcus froze like a deer caught in headlights. His eyes darted around the parking lot, and he took a step backward toward his building. "Who's asking?" he replied, his voice guarded and hostile. "We're Avery Johnson's family," Lila said, stepping forward. "She's missing, and we know you work with her. When was the last time you saw her?" The change in Marcus's demeanor was immediate and telling. His shoulders tensed, his breathing became shallow, and he began wringing his hands nervously. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice was shaking. "I barely know any of the students." "That's not what we heard," Marina said, pulling out her phone to show him the screenshots Avery had shared. "We have text messages that suggest you knew Avery quite well." Marcus's face went pale as he realized his lies were being exposed in real time. "I haven't talked to that girl in weeks," he insisted, but sweat was beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. Marina was ready for this lie. She had spent the previous day organizing all of Avery's screenshots, and she pulled up the most recent exchange between Marcus and her cousin. "This is from 3 days ago," she said, showing him the screen. "You sent her a message saying, 'I just wish I got to taste you once.' That's not weird, right?" The blood drained from Marcus's face as he stared at the evidence of his inappropriate contact with Avery. "Look, I don't know what kind of game you're trying to play," he said, his voice rising with panic. "But I didn't do anything to anybody." "Then why do you have Avery's blanket?" Lila asked quietly. Marcus went completely still. He looked like he had been struck by lightning, realizing that his attempt to dispose of evidence had been witnessed and recorded. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said again, but his voice was barely a whisper now. "We saw you," Marina said, holding up her phone. "We recorded you carrying Avery's quilt into your building an hour ago. We also saw you drop her laptop. So let me ask you again, where is our cousin?" Marcus looked around the parking lot frantically, as if searching for an escape route. When he spoke again, his voice had changed completely. The pretense of innocence was gone, replaced by something dark and threatening. "You people need to mind your own business," he said, his eyes cold and calculating. "Bad things happen to people who don't mind their own business." With that chilling threat hanging in the air, Marcus turned and walked quickly back into his building, leaving Marina and Lila standing in the parking lot with evidence that would ultimately solve their cousin's murder. They had just been threatened by Avery's killer, and they had it all on video. Marina and Lila immediately drove to the Brighton Police Department with their evidence. For the first time since Avery disappeared, law enforcement began to treat the case with the urgency it deserved. Detective Sarah Chun was assigned to lead the investigation, and she immediately recognized that everything the family had discovered pointed to a violent crime. The video of Marcus disposing of evidence, the inappropriate text messages, and the threatening behavior during the confrontation all painted a clear picture of guilt. "This isn't a missing college student," Detective Chun told the family during their interview. "This is a homicide investigation." Detective Chen's first step was to examine the electronic evidence that campus security had completely ignored. As a janitor at Birchwood Heights dorms, Marcus Williams had access to a master keycard that logged every time it was used and at which locations. When Detective Chun pulled the access logs for September 24th, she found something that made her stomach drop and confirmed the family's worst fears. Marcus's keycard had been used to enter Avery's floor at 4:34 p.m., exactly 33 minutes before Avery sent her last text message. More significantly, there was no record of him leaving that floor until after 6 p.m. The electronic evidence painted a clear picture. Marcus had entered Avery's dormitory floor and waited for her to return from her afternoon classes. He had been lying in ambush for over an hour before she came back to her room. Security camera footage corroborated this timeline. Marcus could be seen on campus surveillance pushing a maintenance cart toward Birchwood Heights dorms at 4:30 p.m. He was recorded entering the building and using the elevator to access Avery's floor. But here's where the investigation uncovered its most chilling detail. Cameras in the parking lot showed Marcus's personal vehicle leaving campus at 5:52 p.m., just 45 minutes after Avery's final text message. He entered her floor, waited for her to come back from class, attacked her in her room, and then left campus in his own car with her body. Detective Chun explained to the family. The timeline suggests this was a premeditated ambush. With this electronic evidence, Detective Chun obtained a warrant to search Marcus's apartment and workplace. What investigators found there provided the final pieces of a horrifying puzzle. In Marcus's apartment, hidden in his bedroom closet, investigators found Avery's missing laptop. The search history showed that someone had been researching remote areas outside Brighton, specifically looking for locations that were secluded and difficult to access. They also found Avery's chemistry textbooks, the ones that had been scattered on her dorm room floor during the struggle. Marcus had taken them as trophies, sick mementos of what he had done to the brilliant student who had rejected his advances. But the most damning evidence was hidden under Marcus's mattress. A notebook containing detailed observations about Avery's schedule, her habits, and her routine. The entries showed that Marcus had been stalking her for weeks, learning her patterns, planning his attack. The notebook contained entries like, Tuesday, she has lab until 3, then works front desk until 5. Thursdays, she goes to library after dinner, usually alone. Friday, she usually goes straight to her room after work to pack for weekend trips. Roommate gone Fridays, perfect opportunity. On the final page, dated September 23rd, the day before Avery disappeared, Marcus had written something that would haunt investigators. Tomorrow, she'll be alone. No roommate. Perfect timing. She'll finally have to listen to me. Detective Chun now had overwhelming evidence of premeditation, stalking, and murder. But when police arrived at Marcus's apartment to arrest him on Tuesday morning, September 28th, they found that he had fled. Marcus Williams had vanished, but he had left behind a digital trail that would ultimately lead to justice for Avery. Cell phone towers had tracked his movement south from Brighton toward the remote wilderness areas he had been researching online. Detective Chun coordinated with state and federal authorities to track Marcus's movements. They issued an APB for his vehicle and mobilized search teams to comb the areas where his phone had last been detected. But they weren't just looking for Marcus. They were also searching for Avery. The research on Marcus's laptop had focused heavily on Maplewood Creek Preserve, a vast wilderness area about an hour south of Brighton. The preserve was popular with hikers and campers, but it also contained thousands of acres of dense forest, where someone could easily hide evidence of a crime. Search teams with cadaver dogs began combing the preserve, following trails and checking remote areas where a body might be concealed. The search was complicated by the terrain, thick vegetation, steep ravines, and countless places where someone could hide evidence. For 3 days, the search continued with no results. Avery's family maintained a vigil at the preserve, praying that search teams would find their daughter and that she might somehow still be alive. On Thursday, October 1st, the case took another shocking turn. A motel clerk in a small town near the California border called police to report a suspicious guest who had checked in under a false name but whose car matched the description of Marcus Williams's vehicle. When police arrived at the Sunset Motel, they found Marcus's room empty, but there was evidence that he had been there recently. On the motel room desk, investigators found something that would provide the final, chilling piece of the puzzle: a handwritten confession note that revealed the twisted mindset of a killer. The note Marcus left behind was part confession, part deranged justification for his actions. In his own words, he revealed the entitled, narcissistic thinking that had led him to murder an innocent college student. She wouldn't even say thank you. I did everything for her. Fixed her AC when she needed it. Helped her with her schedule. Bought her gifts. Tried to show her I cared about her more than those stupid college boys ever could. But she acted like I was invisible. Like I was nothing. Like she was too good for me because she was some smart chemistry student and I was just the janitor. But I showed her I'm not nothing. I showed her I have power too. I showed her what happens when you disrespect someone who's trying to love you. The note went on to describe how Marcus had planned the attack with methodical precision, waiting in Avery's room for her to return from her afternoon classes. I used my key to get in around 4:30. I knew she'd be back around 5 because I'd been watching her routine for weeks. I hid in her closet and waited. When she came in, I tried to talk to her, tried to make her understand how I felt about her. But she started screaming and trying to get to her phone. She wouldn't listen to me. She kept saying she was going to call security, that I needed to leave her alone. But I couldn't leave her alone. I loved her. Why couldn't she understand that? The confession revealed that when Avery tried to barricade herself in her bathroom and call for help, Marcus had broken down the door and attacked her. She fought back harder than I expected, drew blood on my neck and hands with her nails. But I'm stronger than some little college girl. I had to make her stop screaming. I had to make her listen to me. Most importantly, the note revealed where Marcus had taken Avery's body after killing her. I wrapped her in that blanket her family gave her. She looked peaceful finally, like she was finally ready to hear what I had to say. I drove her to the creek bed near the old logging road in Maplewood Preserve, about 2 miles past the main trail marker, where the water runs deep. I laid her down gentle, like she was sleeping. She's listening to me now. But the note contained one final, chilling detail that would haunt everyone who read it. I kept some of her things, her textbooks, her laptop, some pictures from her room. I earned them. I loved her more than anyone else ever could have. These things belong to me now. Armed with the specific location information from Marcus's confession, search teams converged on the remote area of Maplewood Creek Preserve. The location was exactly where his internet searches had suggested he might go, a secluded creek bed accessible only by an abandoned logging road that hadn't been used in decades. Detective Chun led the team that would find Avery Johnson's body on Friday, October 2nd, exactly 1 week after she had disappeared. The scene was heartbreaking. Avery was found wrapped in the distinctive quilt that Marina and Lila had seen Marcus carrying, the one her grandmother had made with love for her granddaughter's college journey. The quilt that was meant to bring comfort had become a burial shroud. Avery's body was bound with duct tape around her wrists, ankles, and mouth, evidence of the terror she had experienced in her final moments. Her name necklace, a gift from her parents when she started college, was still around her neck, a final connection to the family who loved her. The medical examiner determined that Avery had died from blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with Marcus's confession that he had struck her when she tried to escape. The defensive wounds on her hands and under her fingernails confirmed that she had fought courageously for her life until the very end. But Marcus Williams would never face justice for his crimes in a courtroom. The same day that Avery's body was discovered, hikers found Marcus Williams's body in a ravine about 15 miles from the motel where he had been staying. He had apparently jumped from a bridge over a deep canyon, ending his life rather than face the consequences of his actions. Next to his body, investigators found a duffel bag containing the trophies he had mentioned in his confession note. Avery's chemistry textbooks, her laptop, and dozens of photographs he had stolen from her dorm room. Even in death, he had been unable to let go of his obsession with the young woman he had murdered. A final note found in Marcus's wallet contained one last disturbing message. "She's mine forever now. No one else can have her." The investigation revealed that Marcus had been planning his suicide since the moment he killed Avery. His internet searches showed that he had been researching methods of suicide alongside his research of body disposal sites. He had never intended to live with the consequences of his crime. He had planned to take the easy way out, leaving Avery's family without the satisfaction of seeing him face justice. The investigation into Avery Johnson's murder exposed a series of institutional failures that had enabled Marcus Williams to stalk, attack, and kill a student under the university's care. Clearview University had hired Marcus through their work-study program without conducting a thorough background check or psychological evaluation. While they knew he had been dismissed from the university for misconduct, they had never investigated the specific nature of that misconduct, which included multiple complaints from female students about stalking behavior. The university's housing security was woefully inadequate. Marcus had unrestricted access to student dormitories with no oversight, monitoring, or accountability for his activities. The keycard system logged his entries, but no one ever reviewed the logs to look for suspicious patterns of behavior. Students like Avery had no effective way to report concerning behavior from university employees. When complaints were made, they were handled by campus security rather than trained professionals, and often dismissed as personality conflicts rather than potential safety threats. Most troubling of all, the initial response to Avery's disappearance had been marked by dangerous assumptions and stereotypes. Authorities had dismissed her family's concerns because they assumed a missing college student was probably just partying or being irresponsible, rather than recognizing the signs of a violent crime. Marina and Lila Johnson channeled their grief into a powerful force for change, becoming advocates for campus safety reform across the country. They worked with legislators to draft comprehensive federal legislation addressing the vulnerabilities that had led to Avery's murder. Avery documented everything, Marina testified before Congress. She told people what was happening. She asked for help. She did everything right, but the system failed her at every level. We can't bring Avery back, but we can make sure this never happens to another student. Avery's Act became federal law in 2023, requiring all universities that receive federal funding to implement strict protocols, including comprehensive background checks and annual psychological evaluations for all campus employees with access to student housing, digital tracking systems that monitor and flag unusual patterns of access to student living areas, multiple anonymous channels for students to report concerning behavior from campus employees, mandatory partnership with local law enforcement for immediate investigation of student disappearances, regular training for campus security on recognizing signs of stalking and predatory behavior. The legislation also established the Avery Johnson Campus Safety Foundation, which provides grants to universities for implementing advanced security measures and training programs. Clearview University faced a wrongful death lawsuit that resulted in a $15 million settlement, one of the largest in campus safety history. The settlement required the university to completely overhaul its housing security, employee screening, and incident response procedures. University President Dr. Robert Hayes was forced to resign in disgrace after the investigation revealed that he had been personally aware of previous complaints about Marcus Williams, but had chosen to ignore them rather than deal with the potential liability. The Department of Education opened a federal investigation into Clearview's Title IX compliance, finding a pattern of inadequate responses to reports of sexual harassment and stalking on campus. The university was placed on probation and required to implement sweeping reforms under federal oversight. But perhaps most significantly, Avery's case became a catalyst for change at universities across the country. Her story is now taught in campus safety training programs, helping other students recognize warning signs and empowering them to seek help before it's too late. Today, 5 years after her murder, Avery Johnson's legacy continues to protect students across the country. The Avery Johnson Memorial Chemistry Laboratory at Clearview University serves as a reminder of the brilliant young woman whose life was cut short and whose death sparked a national conversation about campus safety. Every semester, new chemistry students learn about Avery's story as part of their campus safety orientation. They learn that it's okay to trust their instincts, to report concerning behavior, to ask for help when they feel unsafe. Most importantly, they learn that their safety matters, their concerns are valid, and there are people who will fight for them if something goes wrong. Marina Johnson keeps Benny, Avery's beloved plushie, on her dresser at home. She'd want him to be somewhere safe, Marina says, somewhere he's loved. The chemistry building at Clearview University now bears Avery's name, and a scholarship in her honor provides full tuition support for students from underrepresented backgrounds who are pursuing careers in chemistry. But perhaps the most meaningful tribute to Avery's memory is the hundreds of students who are alive today because of the safety measures implemented in her name. Students who might have faced the same fate as Avery but were protected by the systems her death helped create. The murder of Avery Johnson is more than just a tragic crime. It's a stark reminder of the dangers that young women face every day and the deadly consequences when institutions fail to protect those in their care. How many other students are dealing with someone like Marcus Williams right now? How many are sharing screenshots of disturbing messages with friends, hoping someone will take their concerns seriously? How many are installing extra locks, changing their routines, and living in constant vigilance because they know someone is watching them? Avery's story reminds us that we must do better to protect the young women in our communities. We must take their concerns seriously when they report threatening behavior. We must believe them when they say they feel unsafe. And we must hold institutions accountable when they fail to provide adequate protection. The text message Avery sent to her cousin, "Honestly, if I go missing, start with him," should haunt us all. It represents the reality that too many women live with, the knowledge that the men in their lives who claim to care about them might actually be the greatest threats to their safety. Avery Johnson was 19 years old when her life was stolen from her. She was a brilliant chemistry student, a beloved daughter and cousin, and a young woman whose dreams extended far beyond the laboratory. She should have graduated with her degree. She should have gone on to graduate school or started her career. She should have had the chance to fall in love with someone who respected and cherished her, to marry, to have children, to make the scientific discoveries she was passionate about. Instead, she became the victim of a man who couldn't accept rejection, who used his position of trust to stalk and ultimately murder an innocent young woman whose only crime was being kind to someone who mistook kindness for romantic interest. But Avery's legacy is more than just tragedy. It's about the power of family love to seek justice when systems fail. It's about the importance of believing young women when they say they feel unsafe. It's about the responsibility institutions have to protect the students in their care. Most importantly, it's about the changes that can happen when we refuse to accept that violence against women is inevitable. Avery's act has already prevented other tragedies, protected other students, and saved other lives. Marina Johnson's 3:47 a.m. video of Marcus Williams disposing of evidence became the key to solving her cousin's murder. But it also became something more, proof that families will never stop fighting for justice, that love is stronger than institutional indifference, and that sometimes the most powerful force for change comes from the people who refuse to accept that their loved one died in vain. Avery Johnson's voice continues to make a difference. Her memory continues to inspire change, and her legacy continues to protect others from the fate that befell her. In the end, that may be the most fitting tribute to a young woman who dedicated her life to understanding how things work, how to solve problems, and how to make the world a better place through science and knowledge. Rest in peace, Avery Johnson. Your family's love for you changed everything, and your story will continue to save lives for generations to come. As this story concludes, the fight for campus safety continues. Marina Johnson now travels across the country, speaking at universities and training campus security officers to recognize the warning signs that were missed in Avery's case. Every time I tell Avery's story, Marina says, I hope it reaches someone who needs to hear it. Maybe a student who's dealing with their own Marcus Williams. Maybe a campus administrator who needs to understand the consequences of ignoring safety concerns. Maybe a family member who needs to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. The Avery Johnson case serves as a reminder that true crime isn't just about entertainment. It's about learning from tragedy to prevent future victims. It's about understanding how systems fail and how they can be improved. It's about honoring the memories of those we've lost by fighting to protect those who remain. If you're a student reading this story, remember Avery's courage in documenting the harassment she faced. Trust your instincts. Report concerning behavior. Ask for help when you need it. Your safety matters more than being polite to someone who makes you uncomfortable. If you're a family member concerned about a loved one, remember Marina and Lila's determination to find the truth. Don't let anyone dismiss your concerns or tell you to wait. Follow your instincts and keep fighting for answers. And if you're in a position of authority at a university or any institution that serves young people, remember the failures that cost Avery her life. Take reports seriously. Investigate thoroughly. Put safety above convenience every single time. Avery Johnson's story is a tragedy, but it's also a call to action. It's a reminder that we all have the power to prevent the next tragedy, to protect the next potential victim, and to ensure that no other family has to endure what the Johnson family has endured. The fight continues. Avery's legacy demands nothing less.